Today's segment of Sound Balming is brought to you by Jimmy and Mary's Authentic Body Care. I cannot express to you how much we love their products. Although we use them all year, as the weather gets colder, we need these products even more. The dreaded drop in temperature, the dryness, the itchiness, and the unnecessary flakiness is inevitable. Shea butter from Jimmy and Mary's Authentic Body Care is the only thing that works for my skin and hair needs. Not only do these products cure my dry skin, the whipped butter goes on smoothly and doesn't leave that uncomfortably thick, sticky residue. Bonus? It smells absolutely amazing. There are so many different scents to choose from too. Not only do they carry skincare products, there are products for authentic living, face, shower, hair and beard, spritzers and perfumes, and bath products. Let me tell you, we cannot even keep the stuff in the studio. The entire production team as well as all our children use Jimmy and Mary's product. Jimmy and Mary's take pride in creating quality, handcrafted products from simple ingredients for the entire family. Their products are made for all skin types and are 100% handmade, 100% vegan, and 100% cruelty-free. Skincare is important. Moisture is key, and keeping our skin and hair hydrated is essential. I cannot emphasize how much we trust Jimmy and Mary's for all of our skincare needs. Hurry on up to jimmyandmarys.com and check out their products. Did I mention service is fast and efficient too? Don't forget to mention that you heard about Jimmy and Mary's Authentic Skincare on Sound Balming. Use the discount code SOUNDBALM20 to get 15% off. That's SOUNDBALM20 for 15% off at Jimmy and Mary's Authentic Skincare.
Hey everybody, welcome to Sound Bombing. I created this show for people who want to experience a radical, life-changing journey through the sounds of my diverse guests. I hope that each sound you hear on this show will strengthen your faith, encourage your dreams, and challenge you to awaken the greatness within you.
Drop the bombs. Drop the bomb. We're gonna drop the bomb. Drop the bomb. We're gonna drop the bomb. Drop the bomb. We come to drop the bomb. Drop the bomb.
This is a journey into sound. A journey which along the way will bring to you new color, new dimension, new values, and a new experience.
Lamar Darnell Shields.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to my show. I'm your host, Dr. Lamar Darnell Shield, the creator of Sound Bombing. And my goal with this show is to introduce you to people with the ideas that will help you unlock your full potential, like my next guest, Undrey Jordan. But before we get to Brother Undrey Jordan, who's patiently waiting, I want to just thank all my new listeners. Hey, welcome to the Bomb Shelter. And all my old heads, welcome back. Thank you for all the emails. Thank you for the comments. Thank you for subscribing. And please constantly share with all of your friends about the great things that we're doing. So if you're new to Sound Bombing, you are at the best place at the right time with the right people, with the right host. Because we start out our show with our 3 breaths. We like to start with meditation and mindfulness to clear the space, because I don't know what type of energy that you're bringing. And I'm hoping that you're here because you know, or you heard that I'm always bringing the positive vibes. We're always raising our high vibration, raising that chakra energy up. And so we always start with our 3 breaths. So I want to encourage you, and Brother Undrey, while you're there to do this, I want you to find yourself in a comfortable position. Put your palms on your lap and your palms are facing up. When I used to teach meditation to my 3rd graders, they would always say, sit up, sit back, roll your shoulders back and relax, and slowly close your eyes. And we're going to start with our 3 breaths. And we always inhale through our nose, and then we're going to exhale out of our mouth with a So we're going to start with our first breath. Inhale. Hold it for 3 seconds. Exhale. Now we're going to go a little deeper. 5 seconds. Inhale. Hold it for 5 seconds. Exhale. Now we're going to go a little deeper. We're going to go for 10 seconds. So inhale. Hold it for 10 seconds. Everything soft. Exhale. And what is that called? That is called the breath of life. So I thank you for joining me today in the Bomb Shelter. Again, I'm your host, Dr. Lamar Darnell Shields. I'm so excited that you decide to join me and hang out with me today. As you can see, I'm rocking 2 mics. I got the mic in front of me and I got the mic on my chest. And of course, if you want to pick up any of our merchandise, you can go to drlds.com. And thank you to all my amazing sponsors. You know what I do every morning. I put that smooth shea butter from Jimmy and Mary Shea Butter that gets me pumped up. And then you also know I use my Mountain Made when I'm working out in the morning. So shout out to our great sponsors. So now my amazing guest who's patiently waiting there, his name is Undrey P. Jordan. He is a pioneer in the emerging field of metaphysical addiction counseling. He's a native of Seattle, Washington, and he now lives and has an office on the violent streets of Skid Row in downtown Los Angeles. His soon-to-be-released book, The Energy of Addiction, presents a fresh new look at addiction using metaphysics to identify and treat addiction using frequency and vibration. Undrey has firsthand experience with addiction as he struggled with addiction, homelessness, and continued trips to prison. This allows him to share his unique approach to treating at-risk individuals using a process he calls transformation. His approach identifies that recovery is a term that does not work for most people suffering from addiction and explains that transformation, using the transformation of the energy of addiction, is what most addicts need. Mr. Jordan holds various certifications and has worked in treatment centers from Beverly Hills to Skid Row. And if you don't know, addiction goes far, far, far beyond physical dependency, which may explain withdrawals, but doesn't explain the repetition of addictive behavior over long periods of time, despite its detrimental consequences. The cause of addiction have a far deeper source. Its origins often lie at the spiritual level, and individuals play a big part in their rehab spirituality. Part of this role is gaining personal empowerment within yourself to experience your core essence. Let's talk to Undrey Jordan to find out why many people seek spiritual counseling and rehab and how you can learn to manifest what you want from life on the healthy path of recovery. Undrey Jordan, welcome to Sound Bombing. How are you?
I am wonderful, my brother. Thank you. Thank you.
And now you got to let us know where you're calling in from, and also let us know how you're doing. I always like to check in with my guests because we're dealing with this pandemic, and I just always want to make sure that my guests are taking care of themselves because Undrey, we're always pouring into so many other people, and a lot of times we neglect ourselves. So let us know where you're calling in from, and let us know how you are doing.
Well, right now I'm calling in from my office here on Skid Row. And actually, I'm doing pretty good. My full-time job is with the Salvation Army, where we house, the city has leased one of the hotels, well, several of them. So we house at-risk people for COVID-19. But today's my day off, so I'm just kind of kicking back in my office, doing my thing here, working on that doctorate, man.
There you go, brother. We're going to send you some prayer and energy. Now, for my people that aren't familiar, we hear the term Skid Row. Let my listeners know where Skid Row is.
Skid Row is approximately about 15 blocks radius. It's in the heart of downtown Los Angeles. It's actually moved. It started off of, I believe it was about First and Hill Street. Now the epicenter is 6th and San Pedro. Here you find, anything goes here. It's like a third world country. I don't know if you or your listeners have seen some of the documentaries that's been out about it. There seems to be one coming out every week, but we still don't get no solution. And
we're going to talk about solutions because that's why you're here. And I know you're doing the hard work. I've actually been to Skid Row, man. I do a lot of work in California. Of course, have not flown out there lately, but in this amazing country that we live in, and people call it one of the greatest countries on the planet. You know, that's up for debate. I ain't getting into that, but it has a lot of great qualities. But you know, we don't take care of our own, and we're going to sort of unpack that, Undrey. So I'm so glad that you're here, because of course, when you're talking about this pandemic, and thank you for working on the front lines, being right in the belly of the beast, and taking care of those individuals, pouring back into them. We know people are dealing with addiction at a high level right now, dealing with COVID, dealing with anxiety. But before we get into that, Undrey, tell us about what brought you to this work. Tell us your story.
Well, my story basically starts off, you know, I grew up in a home where there was rampant domestic violence. You know, I can remember times where, you know, my mother's boyfriend would beat her from one end of the house to the other, you know, leaving trails of blood, man, and make me and her clean it up. You know, I grew up, I was born in '67, so most of my years in my youth, you know, my idols were pimps, drug pushers, you know, all of these types of guys. But as I grew older, you know, I started getting into trouble. My first arrest was at the age of 8 with my mom breaking in houses.
Wow. So you all breaking in houses together?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. And I'm 8 years old. So shortly after that, I developed an addiction to alcohol. And that lasted for quite some years. And eventually I started doing crack cocaine and all kinds of other stuff. But what brought me to the work that I do now is the fact that I couldn't get no relief from any other type of treatment, you know, and there were things I didn't want to do what I was doing, but there just didn't seem nothing that fitted me. And for the life of me, I've been to prison 8 times, and I've been to county so many times I can't even count it. But from the age of 8 to the age of 45, it just seemed like I just could not stay out of jail. And so these were a few of the problems that plagued me. And so because there was no like book that I could read this, you know, to help me with my dilemmas, I was introduced to some things. My first book, I remember my ex-girlfriend sent me Asking It Shall Be Given by Jerry and Esther Hicks. I was in prison and I read that, and that introduced me to metaphysics. And once I started learning metaphysics, it just kind of all fell in place. And at some point, I developed a thirst after looking at David Hawkins' emotional frequency scale, looking at a couple of other things. I began to wonder, well, where do I fit in all this? And you'll be amazed.
So how does a kid who starts breaking into homes at 8 years old, looks up to pimps and hustlers, then become introduced and then excited about this concept of metaphysics? Before we go a little deeper, can you give us a definition for my listeners what metaphysics is?
Metaphysics basically deals with that it's kind of difficult to explain, but typically the metaphysics that I practice is basically more in looking into who we are, why are we here, spirituality, is there a God, is there higher power, all of these things that we can't explain. It kind of sits outside of, it is a science in itself, but it sits outside of regular science.
It's interesting that you say that when you were coming on the show, and my amazing producer and engineer sent me all your information. The very first time I heard, and I'm a hip hop head. You grew up in '67. I know you're in California. I know you had some West Coast, some artists that you love. But one of my favorite artists to this day is KRS-One, who actually lived on Skid Row, tells a story. But he was the first person that introduced me to the concept of metaphysics. Now, remember, he had the song, and he came out and said, metaphysics, the science of life. And he talked about metaphysics coming from a Greek word, which means meta, and then physics, pH, meaning the things of nature and the connection. Right. And I was like, wow, blew me away, man. I mean, blew me away. So when I hear people talk about what hip hop doesn't do and what it does do, let me tell you what it did for me. And it sounds like what Esther Hicks was doing for you at the time. And I'm very familiar with that work. When KRS-One introduced that concept of metaphysics to me, I mean, it just really, really took me to another plane, no pun intended, to really get me to start digging deep and starting to ask a lot of those questions of myself. And then also the questions of the people. I had to question the people around me who were supposed to be pouring into me, taking care of me. And so again, a kid who goes from breaking into homes with their mother, become addicted, and then all of a sudden now your mind is open because of this book. So then how did you become addicted? How did you become addicted? What was your drug of choice? And then how do people, there's this huge debate about addiction being a disease. Where are you in that debate?
It's none of the above. It's all of the above. It's a choice. It's a disease, but mainly it's an energy, is what it is.
So explain that.
To really understand what I teach here, you got to kind of be familiar with David Hawkins' emotional frequency scale. For example, I have it here. He has he's been able to identify various emotions using on a frequency scale. Now, there's two works that kind of support what I do. His scale doesn't necessarily identify hertz as a unit, but there's another scale. I'm sorry, the name eludes me, but this doctor was able to measure how you feel and the different body parts that you have. So when you put these two together, what you'll find is that you can identify anything on the scale. For example, real quick, on David Hawkins' scale, shame resonates at about 20, guilt 30, fear 100, pride 175. For me, what really actually happened was I was blessed to understand that, as you mentioned, and as I mentioned that, these pimps and these pushers and the lifestyle that I grew up in gave me what I call a metaphysical a vibrational homeostasis level. Now, homeostasis for your listeners and anybody else is the normal state of the body. That's what a homeostasis is. Not when you're sick, you're good, you're balanced out. So with that, we also have a vibrational homeostasis level. Now, for me, my vibrational state homeostasis level, because of the elements that I grew up in, was very low. For me, shame, guilt, fear, anger, all of these things were the norm for me. These were things that I was very comfortable with. So throughout the first half of my life, what I would do is I would subconsciously seek these things out. And this gave me the answer to why I kept going to prison. I can find anger, I can find guilt, shame, fear, all of that stuff in prison. Same thing with addiction. It was me being drawn more to an energy than it was any kind of substance. To be honest, for me, my understanding now is that I use the substance to create the energy. So am I truly, because here's the point you got to look at. Let's take meth, or let's take crack, right? If we take crack leaves your system in about 72 hours. Right. So if you are off of crack, the physical substance, then why do people go back? What is it they're missing? It can't be the drug because it's out of their system. So what are they seeking? And for individuals like myself, especially in the African-American community, we kind of perpetuate these levels. We perpetuate in our music, like we were just talking about. The music from the 80s is way different from the music of the 90s and 2000s. The energy level has dropped. Back then, when we had the hip, the hobbity, we still felt good. We felt good about ourselves. We had our own music. We had our own culture. And then when the gangster rap came around and I'll shoot your mama and this, that, and the other thing, and the sagging pants, what came around, that lowered our vibration. And that's what we see in America today.
So what were you looking for? What were you searching for that you weren't getting, that you didn't get every time you went into these prison walls? What were you missing?
Well, it wasn't so much what I was missing. It was what I was getting. That's the things. Because see, here's the thing. For me, I could get out of prison, right? And I could be out for 6 months to a year. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I just mess up. And I couldn't understand why we kept doing that. You know, recidivism is real, but recidivism is not just the police setting you up. Recidivism is not this guy is just a criminal. He's a loser. Most of the individuals that suffer from recidivism issues, homelessness, domestic violence, and addiction, all suffer the same situation, which is their vibrational homeostasis level is low. It's about in that range from 20 to, I say, anger, which is about 150 in those hertz. So here's an important part to look at. I used to talk to my mom about, you know, what types of things she would do when she was pregnant with me. And some of the things, I mean, she never like took prenatal classes or like they do now. They encourage women to play music for the baby. Well, now I understand why, because in the fetus, in the womb, there's a liquid called the amniotic fluid, and the amniotic fluid amplifies vibration. The baby, the fetus doesn't have ears, so it's not listening to the words; it's feeling the vibration. So what did I feel? I felt, once again, I felt anger, I felt grief, I felt poverty, I felt.
Were those the things going on with her at the time when she was pregnant with you? So all the emotions that she was feeling coming directly to you so before you even came out the womb, you already set up for failure. You were already, I was crying.
And so therefore, I mean, for me, it was like I could feel love sometimes. I felt joy, happiness, but for me, it was foreign. It was something that did not feel right, if you can understand what I'm saying. So I would get in a relationship, and I'd be in a relationship with the most beautiful and loving woman. And for a while, it would go good, but I would have to do something to mess it up. And after looking at the energy of addiction and homelessness and all of these things with domestic violence, these are things where I can go for a while, but because happiness, joy, acceptance, all of that wasn't my norm, I didn't feel comfortable there.
So at what point did you feel so uncomfortable where you felt that I wanted to change my life? And then after you decided at that moment that I hit rock bottom, that I need to change my life, then at what moment then you start to say, then I need to go out and help other people change their lives as well?
Well, I knew that the information that I was given by God was not something that I was to hoard to myself. I didn't hit a rock bottom. I mean, you know, describing my youth, I don't know what you would call a rock bottom for me. I had already experienced substance abuse. I didn't care about a job. I abandoned my children when they were young. Rock bottom for me wasn't going to work. So I tried various different types of groups. I'm certified as a smart recovery facilitator. I've been a sponsor. I've done all of those things, but none of them were working. So I pretty much gave up on recovery. When I looked at the term recovery, it just took on a whole different meaning. I'm sure we'll get to that in a second. But for me, I guess it was that. I guess God in His infinite ways said, "Look, if I don't throw you this life ring, son, you just gonna." But I was just tired, you know, and I didn't have the answers that I was looking for, and everything that I was trying could not help me resolve the issues. Even when I went to AA, NA, and all of those above, I would still go back and forth to jail. I'd lapse and relapse. It was just a vicious cycle. When I started learning about metaphysics, especially when I identified the vibration that addiction's at, because when you look at Dr. Hawkins' scale, you got shame and guilt at 20 and 30 hertz. Now, if you talk to any addict or alcoholic or anybody that's suffering from any type of addiction, I'm glad you brought that up, because addictions are not just substances. If you kind of take my hand like this, you'll see that the back of my hand here is what is actually addiction. The fingers can be any type that we identify. So it is what we have to do is we have to get to the root of the addiction, and that is the energy itself. So for me, it was learning more and more about energy and how this energy, how I was attracted to this energy, and how this energy plays so much a part of my life, a ruler in my life, because I couldn't understand how to live a life where I was content. I was content without being homeless, without being addicted, without being in a domestic violence situation, without being incarcerated. And that's the life I live today.
Is this what you would describe in your work as the energy of addiction?
Yes. The energy of addiction falls between shame and guilt, right around 25 hertz. And the reason I was able to identify that is because if you ask any addict or anybody that's suffering from addiction, what's the first thing that happens when they relapse? They feel shame and guilt. So addiction is right on that lower echelon of the scale, right around those emotions that produce all that. That's where you'll find addiction at. You're not going to find addiction at, let's say, joy is at 540. You're not going to find addiction there. Peace is 600. Reasoning is 400. You don't reason when you're in addiction. You don't. If I have to choose between a hit and my kids is going to lose, man. There's no reasoning. When you try to tell your kids why daddy sold his bicycle or whatever it is. So when you start to look at that, you can identify and place addiction where it is on that scale. So for me, once again, addiction was a natural occurrence for me. It just fell right in line with all the rest of the things on the low vibrational end of the scale.
So then, Undrey, let's unpack how spirituality helped you with addiction and recovery, and then talk to us about how you look at the concept of recovery. So talk about how spirituality played a role in your addiction and in your recovery, and then define what recovery is in your eyes.
Okay. Well, that's the other part of my childhood. My grandmother was a Pentecostal pastor. She was actually one of the first.
That means y'all was in church all night, all day long. You lived there. How could you get in trouble? You in church every day.
Because the fact of the matter is, like I said, this is all about energy.
Yeah.
Because I lived in two different houses. When my mom was clean, I would stay with her. When she was using, she'd take me to my grandmother. So when I was with my grandmother, like I said, she was one of the first female pastors in Seattle. So she had her church, and I grew up pretty much in her household as well. And for a time, I was actually being groomed to be the next pastor in the family. I went to the Rose of Sharon Theological School in Seattle, and then I got an associate's degree in theology through Family Radio while I was in prison. So I had a very deep spiritual background in the church growing up, but my experiences with the church took a really deep turn. There was a lot of questions. I've always been inquisitive. I've always had questions. I had to figure out how things work. That's just how I am. So I had a lot of questions that people couldn't answer. And I'm talking big name pastors. I would ask them about stories in the Bible, about characters in the Bible, and they would give me answers that just didn't fit what I knew to be, true. So I reluctantly backed away from Christianity for a while. And in that process, I got mad at God. I got to the point where, oh man, there is no God. And so I lived my life like that for a while. And it wasn't until I started really studying metaphysics. Once again, metaphysics has helped me in so many different areas, because metaphysics has helped me to come to a point where I don't have to identify God as a person or anything else. I just need to know that he's there. So the concept that I have of God today works for me, and helps me to move forward instead of being stuck. The other half of it, I'm sorry, what was the other part?
So really talking about spiritual, recovery, the concept of recovery.
Okay. Like I said, I've tried every 12-step, and outside of 12 steps. I was in 12 steps off and on for many years, and for some reason, I just kept finding myself returning back to the substances. Of course, I didn't know anything about energy at this time, so I just came up with the conclusion that it just wasn't working for me. Then I discovered smart recovery. Smart recovery is it's not an opposite. It's a alternative to 12-step recovery. Okay, with 12 steps, you have the 12 steps. Smart recovery, you use cognitive tools to address addictions and addiction behavior. So I found smart recovery a little bit better for me because I'm a thinker, and it gave me an approach without having to believe in a higher power, without having to have a sponsor, to label myself as an addict or an alcoholic or anything like that. And these are the things that kind of push me away from 12-step recovery. When one of the last times I went to prison, I came out, went to school for substance abuse counseling, got my certification, started working in treatment centers. And as I was doing that, as I was going to school, they had us study in 12-step groups. And it was back then when I really started taking a look at this word recovery. And the first thing I did, of course, was look up its definition. And the actual definition of recovery means to recover something to restore something to its former worth or value. And right then and there, I knew it wasn't for me, because that's something that there was no way I mean, when I grew up, if you read the book, you'll see it. My story, there's nothing to return to. There's nothing to recover. So for me, it came to me that my struggles was because I was looking for something that wasn't there for me. So as I'm trying to recover, because I can take it either way. We could take it physically. I was skinny as a rail. I didn't really eat much. I was malnutrition. Mentally, I wasn't really all there mentally. I mean, breaking in houses at 8 years old. So we could take it anywhere. So there's no restoration point in my past that I can look back and say, this was a good time for me.
So I heard you say I was looking for something that wasn't there. So what were you looking for? And then what did drugs do for you? What void were they feeling? And what type of feeling were you getting when you were using whatever substance that you decided to use?
Everything on the low vibrational scale. Drugs are, for most people, when you look at people who are addicts, alcoholics, anybody that's doing any type of addiction, you're looking at somebody who is dealing with low vibrational energy. So the issue at hand is, if you take the substance away and replace it with things that are high vibrational things, well, let me back up a little bit. If you take the substance away, let's say you put them in a treatment center, they'll do good for a while. They can go to meetings, they can look at the literature, go to the classes, go to groups, all of these things, and they'll do good for six months while they're in the program. They'll even do good once they're out of the program. But at some point, many of them fall back into it. Now, once again, you can't say it's the substance, because the substance has left the body. So it's not the substance. So what are most of these people looking at? They're looking at the attachment to low vibrational energy. So if they get out, let's say they get out, get a job, get their kids back, all of these things normal out, right? Now, these are things that are on a higher vibrational level. For them, at some point in time, it's going to be uncomfortable for them. So what's the quickest way for me to get back down to those low vibrational energy? Drugs and alcohol, my old behavior. That gets me there quicker than anything. So the term recovery, when I looked at it and I started looking at, that's a term that comes from AA, recovery. And the founders of AA, one of them didn't even start his drinking until he was in the military. So he had an opportunity to look back over his life and say, because, one was a doctor, one was a stockbroker. These guys had reference points that they can go back and look and say, hey, I remember my dad used to take me camping, and identify with those energies. In my house, there was no 500, 428. There was none of that in my house. There was nothing I was used to. So because those things were absent from my life for so much, and then, if I can revert back to the music, I mean, the music that I listened to, at some point, it changed, and everything about that. Some of the things that, some of the things I watched on TV, some of the things that, the music was the biggest one. I had to really look at that. For example, if I can, a lot of people are surprised when I say this, and sometimes I get flack for it, but it is what it is. Tupac was one of the greatest persons in music, in my opinion, to use metaphysics and energy. Tupac understood that the people, because when Tupac started out with Digital Underground, he wasn't doing none of the hip hop and thug and all of that type of stuff. And Digital Underground, their music kind of higher. They had a higher vibe than the thug music. So when Tupac made the switch, Tupac knew what he was doing. He knew that there's a whole sea of people out there who vibrate on a low scale. These are the people, if I can get down to that vibration and push that vibration, I can sell millions. So that was done deliberately. And there's a lot of other artists that do that. You were talking about KRS-One. KRS-One he understood energy, and that's what he did. And he vibed on that, and certain people picked up on it. But so for me, it was a blind thing. I remember when the 2 Live Crew came out, and they had that song, Drop That Bass or something like that.
Yeah.
Throw That D.
Yeah.
Throw That D. When Throw That D came out, it just engulfed us, because it was one of the first songs to just take us to a low bass.
Yeah.
And so for most of us, that's what we identify with in our communities.
So then how can an average person raise their vibration? And what are some strategies that you use to raise your vibration so you can then start to look at yourself in a different manner than when you were much younger?
Well, the first thing I would suggest is to learn more about energy. And most definitely do a quick recap of your life. Get a hold of Dr. Hawkins' emotional frequency scale and see how the bulk of your life has been spent. In what area? Is it on a lower vibrational scale, or is it on a higher vibrational scale? If it's on a lower vibrational scale, then my first suggestion is to learn more about energy. There are many techniques of raising your energy. And this is something that I didn't understand. This is what caused me to go back and forth to prison a lot, because even though I was in prison, I could raise my vibrational level. I always read books. I studied law while I was in prison. I didn't hang out on the yard and stuff like that. So by the time I would come out, I'd be vibing high. And this is typical of pretty much all inmates that come out. We come out vibing high. We have all the good intentions. We're going to go be with our family, get back with the wife, pay the bills, get a job, all of these things. So we're vibing high. But at some point in time, because that's not our natural norm, then we typically drop back down. So here, my suggestion is, number one, find out what your vibrational homeostasis level is. And if you can identify, like I did, I identified immediately with shame, guilt, anger. These are the things that were normal for me in my neighborhood, in my life, in my family life, in my relationships. it was all around me. Shame, guilt, anger, all of these things were the norm for me. So once I learned where my vibrational homeostasis level was, then I began to set out on how to raise it. I'm glad you asked that, because there's many different ways you can raise it. But the key is, how do you keep it up there? That's the key. Because when I first began, I didn't like meditating. It was difficult for me to meditate. So I would listen to
what made it difficult? What made it difficult for you?
The commitment to doing it.
Because it's interesting. I just interviewed this woman named Katara, and she created the first app for women of color, because a meditation app. Because what she discovered, Undrey, is that all the apps that she was looking for, all the meditation from YouTube to all the other apps that were out there, they didn't speak to her needs as a woman of color.
Right.
And so she decided to create an app specifically geared towards that population. So that's why I was asking you, because I was telling people when I teach meditation as just a common practice, not as a class, but when I'm lecturing or speaking or doing workshops, and I always start out by saying meditation is simple, but it's not easy. People think it's really easy. And with somebody that has a lot of thoughts in your mind, they call it monkey brain.
Monkey mind.
All over the place. It's kind of hard. And your thoughts can be scary. Your thoughts can be scary. So a lot of times when I'm teaching meditation or using it as a practice, in particular folks who are dealing with trauma, I'll ask them, if they want to keep their eyes closed. I say, find a spot in the room and then have a soft gaze, not a stare, but a soft gaze. And then eventually when people feel comfortable, not just with me, but in the space, because Undrey, I hate when people start saying like, this is a safe space. I just met you. This ain't no safe space. You don't know what I've been doing. But that's why I ask you, because I want people to know your practices, and I like the transparency when you said in the beginning, meditation was just hard for me. Because I want to commit to the time and how it was getting done.
Yeah. Yeah. And the way I got over that is I didn't set a time. I didn't set any specific time. I didn't say, okay, well, when I get up in the morning, I'm gonna meditate 15 minutes, or I'm gonna meditate at lunch at work or anything like that. For me, when I started getting comfortable with it is when I just didn't have no time limit on it and said, okay, this is a good time to meditate. Found me a spot and did some meditation. Another thing that helped me to get more in tune with it or more comfortable with it is I started doing grounding. When I started doing grounding, for those that don't know what grounding is, it's a technique that you use to basically match your energy with the Earth's energy to eliminate negative energy. The Earth itself emits an energy or a frequency called the Schumann resonance. So that Schumann resonance, since we come from the Earth, what I like to do, one of the ways that I do, one of the practices that I do is by doing grounding. And that's difficult here because this is all concrete. So I have my special places that I go to. And that's one of the things that, for me, once again, looking at how I grew up, I was fortunate enough, though, to grow up in the Pacific Northwest. It's all green. It's very much a lot of it's still in nature. Well, I don't know about now, but back when I was growing up, it was the evergreen state, and it really was evergreen. So I remember when I was a kid, I got in trouble one time, and they had this program where they take the inner city kids out to the
they got them everywhere. Take them to the woods.
Yeah. Well, they took me skiing. Right. So I was the only brother in the neighborhood who knew how to ski. So anyway, but I was fortunate to get out into nature and to feel the vibrations of nature, which is something that I get into big time today. That's something I suggest. Lead a city, go out and experience the energy of nature itself. Connect back with nature.
I love connection. So another question I have for you is, so connection of nature is very, very important. It keeps you grounded. It just keeps your energy just vibrating over and over again. But I have a question for you about forgiveness. What role has forgiveness played in your recovery process? And then how has your life really impacted the work that you're doing?
Well, Forgiveness fits in with recovery, and like my book states, I don't follow recovery anymore. As I was stating, recovery offers some.
I meant to say transformation. Let me correct myself. So
Okay.
how has forgiveness supported your work of your personal transformation, and how has that transformation moved into the work that you're doing with other people who are addicted to any type of substance, or who are dealing with any life's challenges?
Well, the big thing is forgiveness is a high vibration. So anytime you're practicing forgiveness, you're raising your vibrational level. Now, if you can do that with yourself, that is the highest that you can give yourself, is forgiveness. And not any excuses, not, just don't beat around the bush, just forgive yourself. And as you can do that, and truly feel that, no matter how you do it, there's different practices that meditation's one of them, positive affirmations. You can do it that way. You can write it, put it on your mirror in your bathroom or whatever it is, remind yourself, put it on your dashboard in your car, but practice that for a while, because the process of transformation takes a while. So as I go through the transformation process, which is a lifelong thing, I accomplish things as a result of me raising my vibration, kicking in that universal law of attraction, that part of it.
So Undrey, talk to me about, the people that you were out there in the street and in the world with, and you approach them with this concept. I want you to walk us through that. So the people that you were hanging out with, that you were copping with, that you were breaking in house with, that you were doing whatever then all of a sudden you come back to them and you say, I want to show you how to raise your vibration. I want to bring your energy up. Talk to me about what that process was like for you to then go back to then start doing the work that you're doing.
Well, I haven't really been home yet. So a lot of those guys I haven't really talked to unless they're friends on Facebook. But for the people that's down here, this is classic. This is ground zero for low vibrational homeostasis level. This is most of the people, 99.9% of the people that I talk to have backgrounds like me. So I totally understand what they're going through and where they've been. And the issue that most of them face down here is that they don't know how to raise it. And the challenge is of my work here on Skid Row is to, first of all, help people to identify what energy is. That's a huge thing because, right now you're talking a population of about 15,000, 20,000 people who on a daily basis, they're looking for something to eat, somewhere to sleep. So you're trying to bring this metaphysical thing. And it's a difficult process because there's a lot of people who unfortunately, as a result of bad theoretical teaching from some religions and whatnot, refuse to let go of old idealisms and belief systems. And that presents a challenge for them. So on a day-to-day basis, one of the things that I've learned along my path, especially back when I was being groomed to be a preacher, is for me, it's more about, number one, being an example, and number two, allowing a person to ask me instead of me going to them, saying, hey, man, what happened? Because I remember because I was, when I first came to LA, I was one of the products of Skid Row. I wasn't living in a tent, but I was in a couple of the programs. But yeah, so now it's like my job as I understand it to be is to bring this to individuals who feel that 12-step processes and other processes are not working for them. And also because it's not, even though it's called the energy of addiction, it also addresses homelessness. It also addresses recidivism and domestic violence, because these are all patterns. And all these patterns, when you see people going back to them and getting back in these situations, are a direct result of becoming attached to an energy. an energy range, let me say, and that's low vibrational homeostasis level. So the thing is, Lamar, is that they don't know they're in it. That's the key. And that was what was difficult for me. When I started learning about energy, then I started learning about, wait a minute, hold up. This is what I've been experiencing all my life. And so for me, once I understood that I was trapped in an energy zone, then that opportunity came for freedom, to move up that scale and stay there. That was the key point. So real quickly, my office is arranged using feng shui. I meditate on a daily basis. All the music that I listen to, even if it's jazz or whatever, I remix it to have a vibrational tone underneath it. I do grounding. I do qigong. All of these things keep my vibrational level high. So it doesn't mean I don't experience anger, shame, guilt sometimes. The thing is I don't live there anymore. That's the difference.
So, Undrey, if you can go back to your younger self, what are some things that you would say to yourself?
Well, the biggest thing that I would say to myself is Dre, you're not stupid. And the reason I say that is because that's the concept that I had. That's the self-image that I had of myself. So I shied away from learning. It's funny because me and Mike Tyson share something very similar. Mike Tyson said in one of his interviews that when he was young, he didn't go to school for class. He only showed up at lunchtime. And that was because there was scarce food in the house. And I did the same exact thing. I never went for class. I just showed up at lunchtime, eat lunch, and then I'm back out of there. And for the longest, I just didn't think that I could learn anything. And it wasn't until I was facing a life sentence. They were trying to strike me out. And the public defender I had was getting ready to let him do it. And so I started learning. I took a paralegal class, and lo and behold, man, I started getting A's and B's in law. When your life is dependent on it, I was like, whoa, man, Dre, you're really actually pretty smart. So from then it's just been a serious quest for learning, and it's like a flower. Each level is opening up more and more and more. And I'm really glad that I was able to understand the energy of addiction, because, like, to be honest with you, I mean, it really reaches out to so many different people, not just in addiction. Once again, if you suffer from what seems to be a low vibrational lifestyle, you can raise that and enjoy a beautiful life.
I appreciate that. So, Undrey, how can my listeners get in contact with you, and how can they get a copy of your great book, The Energy of Addiction?
Oh, cool. They can contact me through the website, energyofaddiction.com, or they can look me up on Facebook. I'm on there too. They can they can order a copy of the book on the website too. Now, the book itself, this is a pre-release, so these are all autographed copies for your listeners, man. The book is actually scheduled to be released a little bit later. I want to finish up my doctorate and roll with that. I just finished a second book, but before this book gets released, that's the present I want to give to myself, is to earn my doctorate. Because, like I said, man, I really thought I was stupid.
Well, evidently you are not, because you are saving thousands of lives right there in Los Angeles on Skid Row. We appreciate you for sharing your story. We appreciate you for your transparency. You're going to save some young man, some young lady, some person out there who either is in the belly of addiction right now, who wants to get out and who needed a lifeline. And it's my hope that your voice today was that lifeline. And in addition to your book, the second part of my show is called The Super Bomb Questions, brought to you by Mountain Made. And this is an opportunity for me to ask you some little deeper questions. But the difference between the first part and the second part is that you have to answer these questions rapidly. So are you ready?
Yeah, let's go.
All right, let's go. What's your favorite word?
My favorite word is transformation.
What's your spirit animal?
I'm sorry?
What's your spirit animal?
Lion.
What is your superpower?
My superpower is love.
What moves you to tears of joy?
Transformation.
What moves you to tears of sorrow?
Suffering.
What do you wish you had more time to do?
Work with individuals in prison.
What values do you live by every day?
Honesty.
What guides your heart?
God.
How do you express your gratitude with those you love?
By giving back.
If you were in the Mr. America talent competition, what would your talent be?
I guess talking.
Undrey P. Jordan, I appreciate your story. Appreciate you hanging out with me in a bomb shelter today, man. You are a blessing to me.
Thanks
and to my listeners. Go out and pick up his book. Go to his website. Listen, he's a great person to talk to. I only just gave you a little bit of his story. He has so much more to share. So go check out the website. Undrey, thanks for joining me.
Hey, thank you. Thank you. You have a good day. Thank you.
All right. I would also like to thank my engineer, my great engineer, Alexander Block, my super duper producer, Nicole Klempaka, Supremacy for our theme music, and all of you for listening. If you want to know more about me, go to drlds.com. If you want to know about my products, you can definitely go there. And if you would like to support the show, again, you can go and make a donation at buymeacupofcoffee.com/soundbombing. Again, buymeacupofcoffee.com/soundbombing. And as always, believe that something wonderful is about to happen, but some people miss the message because they're too busy looking for the mess. Thanks for tuning in, and you've been listening to Sound Bombing. Peace.
The Super Bomb questions are brought to you by Mountain Made CBD. Mountain Made is changing the CBD game by offering a line of high-dose CBD tablets at an affordable price. Their products are THC-free and third-party tested for accuracy, cleanliness, and potency. Their products, which ship nationwide, include Build for CBD saturation, Boost for precision titration, and Recover for rest and rehab. With 9 years experience in hemp and fitness, Mountain Made's founders are focused on creating a quality product to help those who live an activated lifestyle. Check out mountainmade.life. Again, that's mountainmade.life to find out more about how their products can help you crush life. Remember, their products ship nationwide. Go check out their website today and follow them on social media at Mountain Made. That's the @MNTMADE. Our staff at Sound Bombing uses Build before a morning workout, which helps to push our bodies to a whole new level on a daily basis. Try Build, try Boost, try Recover. Our staff is using these products to enhance our active lifestyle naturally, and we are crushing life with Mountain Made CBD, and you can too. Start today by going to mountainmade.life and ordering Build, Boost, Recover, or the multitude of other products that they have which will enhance your lifestyle. I promise you, you won't regret it.